Hello and welcome. I'm glad you're here. Let's start. My name is Irene Hewlett. I'm 32 years old, and for 5 years, I was no one's daughter. My parents, Jerry and Diane, cut me off completely, blocked my number, skipped my residency graduation, and ignored my wedding. All because of one lie, a lie my sister Monica told. She said I dropped out of medical school. That single lie destroyed my family bonds and made me invisible in my own home. Growing up in Hartford, Connecticut, there were two daughters in the Hewlett household: Monica, the shining star, and me, the quiet one. Monica was 3 years older, effortless in social settings, always performing, always praised. I buried my nose in biology textbooks, competed in science fairs, and earned high grades. But my parents barely noticed. Every achievement of mine was a whisper compared to her applause. The state science fair? Monica had a theatre performance that same weekend. My second place ribbon? Dad glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Rai," and went on. I learned early that being quiet, obedient, and successful wouldn't make me visible. I had to be undeniable. That moment came when I got accepted into Oregon Health and Science University's medical program. My father read the acceptance letter at the kitchen table. "That's a real medical school," he said, tasting the words. Then he looked at me. "Maybe you'll make something of yourself after all, Rennie." It wasn't praise, but it was the closest thing to recognition I had ever received. Mom called Aunt Ruth, called her sister, neighbors, anyone who would listen. Genuine pride. Monica smiled that weekend, but her eyes were calculating. For the first time, I felt her attention, her curiosity, but I didn't know it was a trap. In my third year of med school, my roommate, Sarah Mitchell, a woman raised in foster care, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I took a leave of absence to care for her. Everything was documented, legitimate. I called Monica, trusting her to keep my secret. 3 days later, my parents called. My world collapsed. Monica had told them everything. I had supposedly dropped out. I was homeless, dating a man with a drug problem, and had refused to contact them. I tried to explain, showed paperwork, offered contacts, but nothing mattered. They didn't believe me. My calls went unanswered, emails returned unopened, letters returned by post. In 1 week, I went from daughter to ghost. Sarah died quietly in December. I was there, alone. I planned her funeral, read her eulogy to empty pews, then returned to my studies, determined to climb. Not for my parents, not for Monica, but for Sarah, and for the person I believed I could become. I finished med school, matched into a surgical residency, and eventually became chief of trauma surgery at Mercy Rest Medical Center. I built a life from nothing. No family support, no safety net, long hours, and late nights surviving on cafeteria leftovers. 5 years later, life decided to intervene. In January, a pager woke me at 3:07 a.m. Level 1 trauma, single female, 35, blunt abdominal trauma. ETA, 8 minutes. I read the incoming chart, Monica Hewlett. My hands went cold, my stomach clenched. Behind that ambulance I knew were my parents, the ones who had erased me. The trauma team was already assembling, and I was chief. The best surgeon in the building. I could save her. But this wasn't a patient. This was the sister who had destroyed me. I took a deep breath, scrubbed in, disclosed the conflict of interest, documented everything, and stepped into the OR. Monica's injuries were catastrophic. Ruptured spleen, grade 3 liver laceration, bleeding from mesenteric vessels. For 3 hours and 40 minutes, I worked methodically, meticulously, letting no emotion interfere. Scalpel, clamps, sutures, cauterization, every movement precise. My residents watched, captivated by the clinical prowess I displayed. When the final stitch went in, Monica was stable, alive. I walked toward the waiting room, scrubbed, badge visible. Dr. Irene Hewlett, MD, FACS, Chief of Trauma Surgery. My parents froze. Recognition hit them like a physical force. Doctor, Dad whispered. You're the chief? Mum's hands trembled, pressing against Dad's arm so hard it left bruises. For 5 years, they had pretended I didn't exist. Now the truth stood before them, undeniable, authoritative, alive. I calmly explained Monica's condition, the surgery, and her prognosis. Mum tried to argue. You sent letters? Emails? I stated the facts. 14 calls in 5 days, 2 emails, 1 handwritten letter, all ignored or returned unopened. Aunt Ruth had even attempted to intervene. Facts, not volume, held the weight. Silence now carried the authority I had never received as a child. Meanwhile, Monica lay in the ICU, glassy-eyed, her body a puzzle I had repaired, her mind beginning to comprehend the consequences. She had no script. For the first time in decades, she was unarmed. Aunt Ruth arrived with proof. Emails, leave of absence paperwork, re-enrollment confirmations, my residency graduation photos, all evidence of my diligence and truth. Ruth confronted Monica directly. You told me to keep quiet for the family's sake. But this family hasn't had peace. It's had a 5-year blackout. And you, Monica, let it happen. Mom read every email, every letter, her lips moving as the reality sank in. Dad, silent at first, finally broke down in tears. Not because of grief, but because the structure of his understanding, his beliefs about his daughters, had collapsed. 5 years of lies, manipulation, and silence could not survive the weight of documented truth and professional achievement. When I finally spoke to my parents, I was calm. I acknowledged their sorrow, but made one thing clear: my life, my terms. I was no longer the girl they could send away or ignore. I had built an entire world without their acknowledgement. If they wanted to be part of it, it would be on my terms, not Monica's, not theirs. They nodded, devastated, silently accepting that the daughter they had erased had returned as someone entirely their equal, and more. Monica, healed physically but emotionally stripped, now faced the reality of her manipulation. She could no longer rely on lies to maintain her position, no longer manipulate my parents' love. In that ICU room, surrounded by monitors and beeping machines, her persona shattered. She was forced to confront the consequences of 5 years of deception. Aunt Ruth ensured the truth was incontrovertible, and my parents could no longer deny it. The lesson was brutal and unflinching. Life does not wait for closure. Betrayal can cut deep, but resilience can carve an even stronger path. I had no choice but to rebuild, to climb, to transform every hardship into mastery over my own destiny. Medical school, residency, financial stress, grief. These became the scaffolding upon which I constructed not only a career, but a life unassailable by family betrayal. I now live in a suburban home with my husband, a golden retriever named Hippocrates, and a life that is unequivocally mine. I wake each morning without longing for recognition from the parents who once erased me. Yet, there is a hollow ache where familial acceptance should have been, a shadow that flits across holidays and anniversaries. Aunt Ruth remains my thread to that past, the only family connection untarnished by lies. Monica's accident, while tragic, became the catalyst for truth. In that surgical act, I demonstrated both my skill and my authority, irrevocably altering the dynamics of our family. My parents, confronted with undeniable proof of both my competence and her deception, faced the consequences of choices they had enabled. No amount of charm, tears, or manipulation could reconstruct the facade Monica had carefully crafted. Inevitably, the truth reshaped every relationship. Mom and Dad are aware of their mistakes. Monica is forced to navigate the remnants of her credibility, and I, Irene, hold the power, the proof, and the autonomy that had been denied me for decades. This is not revenge. It is justice by existence, by achievement, by unwavering commitment to truth and skill. In the operating room that morning, I was not a daughter, not a sister, not a pawn in Monica's narrative. I was a surgeon. I was the chief. I held life in my hands, including that of the woman who tried to erase me. And in that act, all the years of invisibility, rejection, and betrayal were confronted, answered, and resolved. The law of reality, skill, diligence, and fact overrode deceit, privilege, and favoritism. Ultimately, the story is one of endurance and triumph. Family can fail you, lies can sever ties, and ambition can be shadowed by manipulation. But integrity, skill, and perseverance are unassailable. 5 years of estrangement ended not with confrontation, but with the undeniable lived proof of my life's trajectory. 5 years of silence were answered with mastery, compassion, and decisiveness. And in that ICU room, in the glow of monitors and fluorescent lights, I reclaimed my identity, not as a daughter to parents, but as a woman who would never be erased again. Monica recovered. She faces the consequences of her choices. My parents, for the first time, understand the weight of their neglect. Aunt Ruth, ever vigilant, ensures history does not repeat, and I continue my life with clarity, purpose, and authority, knowing that achievement, truth, and resilience can create a family of choice and a life of unshakable integrity. I am Irene Hewlett. I survived betrayal, heartbreak, and erasure. I became who I was always meant to be, and no one, not Monica, not my parents, can take that away.